and then I'll broadcast.
Oh, there's Suzanne and Kevin.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Suzanne.
Oh,
And
Happy New Year.
New Year.
Okay, Judy, so I think we're all here. You know, we have a quorum, and I see Sierra and Tiffany from the Pettingill House, and also Kevin Hurley is here as well. We can
okay.
begin when you're ready, and we're
Sure.
recording.
Sure. So this is the January 7th, 2021 Affordable Housing Trust meeting for the city of Newburyport. And we have Caitlin Sullivan and Andy Port, staff members and trust members, myself and Madeline Nash and Suzanne Cameron. Tiffany Negrove is here from, and Sierra, I forget Sierra's last name, I'm sorry, from Pettingill House, and also joining us will be Kevin Hurley. So our first item on the agenda is the Emergency Rental Assistance Program update. And we did get an update in our packet today, so thank you for that. So Tiffany, you want to give us a summary?
Sure. So since the last time that we met, there's 3 additional households that have been assisted, totaling $7,900, $7,927. So bringing the total assistance to date to $45,641. So the program, I think, is running smoothly. We've kind of settled in, and you know, as far as internal processing of applications, like I had put in the narrative, we do have seven active applicants that we're working with to either them and or the landlords to gather the additional documentation for approval. And at the time that I had sent the spreadsheet on Tuesday, we had 2 new applicants. And as of today, we have a total of 5 new applicants. So we will be in the process of doing the COVID screening to see that they meet the eligibility that they were affected by COVID and their income has been affected, and then start the process for gathering paperwork.
So that's 5 new applicants then.
Correct.
Yep.
Yep. So it was 2 as of Tuesday, but there were an additional 3 that had come in after I sent the report between then and current today.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, and of those 5, there's 3 families and 2 individuals.
Do you feel like there's more people that are becoming aware of the program?
Yes,
I mean,
and
it seems like maybe there's an uptick in the number of applicants, or am I mistaken?
I think at the beginning, there was quite a few applicants that have been kind of ongoing that I think are in need, were in need, and just didn't follow through with the process. I think that there was kind of a lull in the middle, and now, yes, I feel like there's, with 5 just coming in over the course of a week, that is definitely a significant increase in a short period of time. And I don't know yet if that is because of the moratorium and landlords putting anything into effect with these specific ones that have recently come through. So
Another question. I know our assistance is limited. There's a limit on how much assistance any one household can receive.
Mhm.
I could probably figure this out by looking at your report. But have we bumped up against that yet with any household?
So there are some families that we will be checking in on to see if there is additional assistance that's needed. We do have some additional COVID funding that we have used with some of these families, right? Because they've either reached the 3-month cap or they've reached the $1,500 cap.
Yeah, there's a few. I can see them.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then there's some that, said, I'm all set right now. And we say, if there's additional assistance that you need because circumstances change, because, they're back to work, but, things are changing because, we're still on this 2-week restriction, hours are cut. So we're saying, make sure that your housing is a priority and that you're not putting that in jeopardy. So check back in if there's additional assistance that's needed.
So I guess I have one other question and then I'll stop. Sorry. I'm wondering, since we're going to be talking next about an emergency assistance program that is not tied to COVID, are you receiving applications to this program from folks who aren't eligible because it's not a COVID related situation?
Yes, there were a few applicants that applied, just kind of seeing the word Newburyport rental assistance and kind of overlooking, the COVID and how it's affected their income. So yes, there are individuals and households and families that are in need for various reasons that aren't COVID specific. And, we do the best we can with other sources of funding that we have. And I know there's Newburyport Charitable, there's Howard Benevolent, so we work together to, to make sure that these families are stabilized.
Yeah. I don't have any questions for Tiffany. Anyone else? Suzanne?
I do not. Good job.
Thanks.
Well, I think it's great that we're going to be talking next about a general emergency rental assistance program. I mean, I don't know how feasible that is, but I hate to think that there are people during this very difficult time that we can't either continue to assist because they've maxed out on what they can get through our program, or that they're just struggling. I mean, clearly that's going to be a problem in any community to some degree, but I think it's good that we're trying to think beyond this program to see if there's a way to respond.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay, so shall we get on to the discussion with Kevin and the home funds? Kevin, are you there?
I think I am here, Judy. Nice to see you and the gang.
Yeah, good to see you, Kevin. Yeah, excellent.
Happy to talk with you about the program and how it works. And I have sent some material to you, Caitlin, indicating the number of dollars we've set aside for the city of Newburyport in home funds to cover, essentially the funds can be used for the development of affordable housing, generally speaking. But we have made some allowances over the years to use a portion of our funds regionally for tenant-based rental assistance. And it sounds like that's what you are doing. It's tenant-based and it's not subsidizing an address or a development. It's helping a family or an individual. And so I should know the number off the top of my head. I know it's something like $77,000 and change. Does that sound right, Caitlin, do you think?
Yes, that sounds right. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah. And we've been using home funds for that purpose for a number of years with different, mostly with nonprofit organizations. Sometimes a city or town will try to do it, but I think my observation is it's easier for the city or town if they can find someone who will run with this. And it sounds like, Tiffany, you've been doing this for a while and you know how to do it. But the only snag might be in this discussion. I don't know how familiar you are with the regulations that govern the use of these federal home funds. And, it depends on how you look at it. I hope they're not terribly burdensome, but they are to some degree. I'll just offer that overall, we've been using these funds to help families and individuals, but lately more individuals who are actually homeless, meaning living outdoors, living in a tent, living in their car, sometimes crashing on someone's couch, but that's usually short term. And so the amount of dollars we've committed to each of those households has been relatively high because the program has generally worked for us as a one-year subsidy. And we would request that the recipient would pay 1/3 of their monthly income toward their rent and that the program would pick up the rest. Well, at the risk of stating the obvious, some of these folks have very limited monthly income or some have no monthly income. So it can get expensive. It's not unusual for us to spend $10,000 to $12,000 a year per household. And it sounds like you're not looking to do that. You're looking to help someone over a difficult patch. Maybe if someone has fallen behind in their rent, you can help with the arrearages, which is not the intent of this program, but we can find a way to work through some of those things. Or you might be using, or you might intend to use these funds for first, last, and security to help someone get into an apartment. But you mentioned a cap of $1,500, which is what you want to do, but it feels a little modest, depending upon the kind of help you want to give. So I don't know, I guess I was hoping to learn tonight a little bit more about how you intend to use the home funds and whether it would be a longer term subsidy, like a 12-month subsidy, or it's just a maximum amount that might help someone. I mean, $1,500 might help someone with 1 month's rent, but maybe not even enough for that, given what rents are these days. So I guess I was going to ask, what are your thoughts?
So our the 1,500 is 1,500 per month.
Oh, I see. Oh, for
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So we have a 3-month. So it's a the limit on the current program is a total of 4,500.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
feels a little more generous and realistic. Sorry to be kind of landing what I thought was a kind of a small number. That's a little bit more realistic.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, so I guess I'll start in that. I think we had talked about using this money for general rental assistance. And also we had talked about the possibility of first last security deposit as well. that those were possibilities. And that this be used, would be separate from the COVID relief. It would be non-COVID.
Mhm. Okay.
And so, yeah, our questions did have to do with the restrictions, and I have quickly looked through the document you sent, and there looks like there's a number of restrictions with regard to some of the wording in the in any of the leases, and also a restriction to very low income, so 50% and below. Is that correct?
We do, I mean, in general, we intend to focus our funds on helping those who are the most in need. And by that, we interpret that to mean the least wealthy.
Yep.
I think we can go up to 60% of median income. And it's my belief that we would not help a household at 80% of median income.
Okay.
Uh, and overall, and I don't like the way this is going to sound, but it's not been difficult to find those households that have very modest incomes at 30% of median or 50% or in that range.
Right.
And I
Right.
might expect you might be finding that with the applicants that are coming to you.
Right.
So you know, I sent Caitlin and Judy and Madeline some of the parameters that are described in the federal regulations. And I thought, gee, is this a really mean thing to do? Because it's as dry as toast. There's more information in there than is really needed. But there are some parameters, and maybe the most obvious ones are that if these federal funds are to be used, the unit must meet certain standards. It certainly must meet code, and it must be a safe and sanitary and decent apartment. And someone would typically be required to go and inspect that unit and report. I mean, there's like a chart to fill out that it has all these different amenities: hot water, windows, room size, things like that. And then I may have mentioned in my possibly too long reply to you, Caitlin, that HUD has eased up on some of those requirements because of COVID. So for example, instead of having someone go to the site and fill in a form with checking 20 boxes or something like that, they would allow, even for the property owner, to take you on a virtual tour of the unit using their phone. So that if in your judgment, you see through that kind of communication that it's checking all the boxes that you need to see, then that would be adequate. You don't need to do a physical visit to the site. So things like that. And I mentioned, I think with that caveat that we don't know how long these COVID related easing up of regulations will be in place, but we haven't heard anything for a few months. So we're thinking it's going to stay for a while. Nevertheless, if this program were to continue, you'd want to know what the overall parameters were.
Right. Right.
I have a couple of questions. So I think we're kind of talking about a couple of different things. One, we were envisioning applying to this Community Preservation Commission for funds for a program that would be targeted to providing first, last, and security assistance with first, last, and security for properties that are affordable housing, offer affordable housing units, not just properties on the market, but specific income restricted properties. We have one that's about to go online in a 40R district, right? So we have a draft for a CPA application. I'm looking at you, Judy.
Yes. Yep.
So that's a very specific thing. It's targeted to income restricted properties, and it's limited to first, last, and securities, some kind of assistance with that. We wouldn't necessarily be funding 100% of first, last, and security, but some portion of that, because we want to make sure that people have the opportunity to rent those units They're not that, the rents are kind of high. We are aware of that. So we're kind of concerned about that, but we can't do anything about that. Exactly. What we're trying to do is help them get into them, right? So that's a separate thing. We're not talking about home for that,
Okay.
right? But then I think we're talking about another program with home that would be for the general rental market. And it either could be limited to first, last, and security, or it could be, you know, subsidizing the monthly rent indefinitely. Right?
Right. Yeah, that's what, yep.
I mean, I think that's probably what the average municipality that's doing this rental assistance program is doing. Kevin, is that correct? That it's not limited to first, last, and security?
Uh, You're right. It's not limited to first, last, and security. And in fact, people can be pretty creative about the way they think about these things. And I think after we discuss this tonight, I'll ask you to give some thought as to what do you want the parameters of your program to be? If it's going to be first, last, and security, that's one thing, and that would be allowable. But if you want to also offer long-term, then we'd need to know that too, so you can kind of like build it into your scope of services in the contract with us. One thing that I pick up on Madeline is that long-term assistance, that's, you know, that's not a great fit for this particular type of program. The feds say we can allow for subsidy for up to a maximum of 24 months. But because of the politics from our cities and towns, people have said, I mean, it almost feels like people don't want to provide a handout. They don't want to encourage dependency, which is, you know, we might all acknowledge that's kind of a foolish attitude to have, but we can't ignore it completely.
Mhm.
The point being, our rental subsidies have been limited to a 12-month subsidy. So
Yeah, I mean,
pretty
that's
good
fine.
deal.
So, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, one of the things I have lots of concerns, but one of them is creating a program that we can't continue, you know, like creating a funding source for people that we can't continue.
Right.
You know, the Section 8 program has been around for a long time and it seems pretty solid. I mean, I know it's debated off and on, but it seems pretty reliable compared to this, where, you know, you wouldn't want to set something up and then not be able to continue to help people.
No,
So,
you're exactly right. And you're right to be concerned about that. And even if you were to help someone with first, last, and security to get into those one of the affordable units, I mean, I don't know what the rents are, but I'm seeing what's going on in the market. There's a lot of new units coming online in Beverly, for example. $2,200 a month is pretty common for, you know, for a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom might be a little bit more. So you'd like to help someone get in, but then you don't want to set them up for failure if 6 months later they, you know, they can't afford it.
well, I think that's why we were talking about with our CPC application,
Yeah,
having it only for down payment assistance. I mean, first, last, and security for income restricted units rather
Yeah.
than just market rate.
Right. And for the 40R units, at least, I mean, they require a certain level of income. You know, the applicants get told that they, I believe, I mean, I've kind of heard this second, third hand from someone who's who knows somebody who's inquired, and they say, well, you're not at 80% of median, so you don't qualify.
You mean because you can't afford it?
Right, yeah.
You're too low income. You can't afford these rents, which,
Right.
yeah.
and so on that note, it would be great if you were able to secure some CPA funds to help them pay their rent, but then it might need kind of an annual renewal process. And I guess you'd want some assurance from your friends at CPA that that's a possibility, that it could be renewed year after year in order to keep these households stably housed.
It sounds like, maybe we do need to limit it to first, last, and security because of all of this. And Kevin, I'm sorry if you've already said this. Is what you're telling us that there are other communities that are doing that, limiting it to first, last, and security?
The truth is, it's all over the map. We have a program with the North Shore Community Action Programs, which is based in Salem, and they're serving primarily Salem, Beverly, Danvers, and Peabody. And they are doing some first, last, and security, some long-term assistance, meaning a 12-month subsidy, and other things. So we can allow you to be creative as long as it falls within the regulations, but you need to kind of tell us up front what your ideas are and how you intend to do it. And if you want to have a multiple pronged approach, that'll be fine. We just need to know that without having to change a contract we would have with you midstream.
Right.
So it sounds like I might encourage you to have a multiple pronged approach. If you're thinking you might do some first, last security, some long-term subsidies. And, part of this discussion, I'm afraid, is I'm hoping that the restrictions on the use of these federal funds doesn't make it harder for you to implement other programs, because you'll be looking at different rules and regulations for different dollars, which is kind of a pain. But maybe to some degree, we're used to doing that too.
Do we have an inspectional services mechanism set up? Either at the nonprofit or within the city?
And a nonprofit that does inspections?
Well, no, because there's what I'm hearing Kevin saying is with these funds, we have to do an inspection.
Right.
And so that is a big piece that we have to make sure that is we're able to do. So.
And so, Susan, in some communities, they prevail upon the local building inspection department to do that. But to be honest, it's typically not welcomed because they're feeling that they're busy enough and we don't really have time to do this for you. I guess I might, not to put you on the spot, Tiffany, but I might imagine that you already have some mechanism in place where your existing staff, when they're looking at a unit to help someone, they have some standards and you're familiar with how to do that. But I don't know.
So I would think that the CAP agencies are certainly equipped to do inspections that typically they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm not sure the landlord would want the city coming in and doing an inspection.
Yeah.
Right.
But anyway, that's a big piece of it. And so Kevin, if we did first, last, and security, that inspection is still required, or is it for subsidy only?
Well, that would be seen as a short-term subsidy. So I would say it's still required even for a short-term. I mean, really, we're talking about a couple of months here, but again, the feds want to make sure that the money is not being spent on something that doesn't meet code, for example. That would give the trust kind of a good front page story. The trust is spending money on some unit that doesn't even meet building code. So the idea of having it inspected to meet certain codes is probably a good thing, but as I say, kind of an inconvenience.
So Kevin, I have a question. The North Shore Home Consortium probably you have to report to HUD annually on how your funds are being spent and prove to HUD that it's all complying with the home regulations. How would the city of Newburyport be responsible for reporting to you so you can complete your report to HUD?
Well, you won't be surprised to hear that there is sort of a bit of a bureaucratic process in place. Typically, we ask the the person running the program. So it might be Pet and Gill House to fill in what is called a project setup form, where we get information about the address, number of bedrooms, household, getting the assistance. And we would commit funds to that particular household and draw them down over a period of time, depending upon the length of the subsidy. If it's first, last, and security, then it would be over quickly, because it would probably be a one-time payment for something like a 3 months rent or something like that. And if the subsidy were to last longer than 12 months, let's say the decision was made to renew the subsidy for that same household for another 12-month cycle, then we'd look for some additional income verification and reporting, which would be part of the first round also. I mean, just to make sure that wealthy people are not receiving these public funds. And I don't think it's a whole lot more difficult than that, because once this data is entered into the system, it's available to HUD and to us to see how it's going. So I would say there's not a big amount of annual reporting, because you're doing the reporting with monthly drawdowns, for example.
Okay.
So getting back to the inspections issue, and this is a question for Tiffany, is that something that you guys have any bandwidth or any resources to do inspections?
Yeah, so we do not have any expertise in that. I guess I would say, like, because there are, I'm assuming, like, and Kevin, I'm assuming, like, kids, is it children under a certain age with the lead and all of that as well?
There would be, some information about the presence of lead-based paint.
Yeah, and
And of
occupancy
course,
permit and all of that. It's,
Sure, certificate of occupancy, that's
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. It's my understanding, Tiffany, that you're currently working with Community Action based in Haverhill, with helping them with some rental subsidies, like a raft program or something. I think Bob Gold mentioned it to me some
Yeah.
months ago.
so we're like referring clients that are in arrears to the raft program and, collaborate. We don't take the applications,
Oh, I see.
but yeah, working with Bob to, do it somewhat locally, but also working with CTI in Lowell as well. But we don't administer or take any applications for raft. I mean, we may help a client, but we're not subcontracted.
Yeah, so I guess I bring it up in the context of, I think someone earlier had mentioned, well, maybe the local CAP agency would have the capacity to do such an inspection. I would say Community Action based in Haverhill would have the capacity,
Mhm.
but we don't know if they have the bandwidth to do it. And then we don't know if they would want to be compensated for the time of that staff person to do it. And although I think that this rental subsidy program is very good, there's very limited admin money related to it. So we have to be able to document how much of the money goes to help the household and not for administrative costs. And that's another, being very frank with you, it's another pain in the neck.
Yeah.
So if you have some other funding that could be used for those administrative costs, that's not home dollars, that might help to cover those costs. If there are some admin costs to cover the inspection that you'd need to pay Community Action, with the presumption that they could take that on. I'm guessing we may not be talking that many households, I don't know, 10 or 12, maybe fewer than that. I might hope that Community Action could take that on in the course of several months, but I can't speak for Bob.
Kevin,
CTI is also the administrator of Section 8 in Newburyport, so CTI may, for some money, provide those inspections as well. Just saying,
Okay.
just putting it out there.
Yeah, sounds good.
So I'm sorry if I'm not understanding, but are there any community, you mentioned that there's the North Shore
Yeah, not sure community
Group.
action.
Community Action that's using funds for rental assistance. Are there
Yes.
any municipalities that are doing it? Like something kind of similar to what we were envisioning, partnering with Pettingill?
I think essentially no. I think they're deciding that in order to implement this, they need to use a nonprofit like a CAP agency to help them get through this. Gloucester is using some, well, actually, it's not Gloucester, it's the CAP agency in Gloucester called Action Inc.
Right.
And they're using a variety of different funding sources, including home, but some other funds like CPA, to implement a rental subsidy program in 5 or 6 communities, Gloucester, Rockport, and adjacent cities and towns.
Nothing in Salisbury?
I think not. No, nothing in Salisbury. I can't even recall now whether we had developed something with the YWCA of Greater Newburyport some time ago, but instead of that, we've mostly directed our home funds to the development of housing in Salisbury. And John Feehan has been behind
Right.
all of that and has done a great job, and it's something that we might all like to point to as a good result.
Yeah, well,
Um,
that's what we would really like to do with our home dollars. At least
know.
I would really like to do with our home dollars. We just haven't had the opportunity to dedicate it to a project. So that's, and then COVID came along. I guess
Right.
I'm thinking personally, I'm thinking that I have quite a bit of experience with home.
Yeah,
I feel that it's a very bureaucratic funding source compared to CPA funds. And I know we have, a little bit of money that comes to the city every year, something like 75,000 in home dollars that we would love to use. And that this sounds like a great opportunity to make use of these funds. I just am concerned that it's very bureaucratic and we don't really have the capacity. And if we could partner with another couple of communities and create a regional program where, they'd have the capacity to do inspections and the reporting and
well,
I think that might make more sense.
yeah, that may be a possibility. And if I may offer, I wish that we had set aside so many dollars for the city of Newburyport every year. It's not 75 a year. The number I was talking about earlier was really an accumulation of 2 years funding.
Oh,
So
okay.
77 is over a couple of years. And we typically don't allow for an accumulation because HUD has this use it or lose it policy. So we, as you would be familiar, Madeline, we tend to scoop it back, put it into our competitive pool, and we spend it on the kind of developments you just described, like John Feehan's projects in downtown Salisbury. But the town of North Andover had decided, again, communities don't want to give up the dollars that are available to them. They reached out to the Greater Lawrence Community Action Council and developed a rental subsidy program using kind of a small amount of money, like $45,000. And so North Andover has a program that's being managed by the CAC in downtown Lawrence. It's a bit of a stretch, and I kind of presumed here that because you have a good working relationship with Pettingill House already in place, that you wouldn't want to go that far away.
Mhm.
But it may be possible to have some discussions with the Greater Lawrence CAP agency about whether they would like to do some work in Newburyport. But having just said that, it's actually Community Action that covers Newburyport and not the Greater Lawrence group.
Right.
Am I correct on that? I think so.
I think so. Yeah. Community action. Yeah. In Haverhill. Yeah.
But they have capacity. It sounds like Tiffany, you and your group are doing the outreach and accepting applications and referring people to Community Action.
Yeah, for the raft funding.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So Madeline, are you saying it's kind of a little too messy or possibly a little too daunting to use these dollars. I mean, you know, part of me wishes I could sort of give you the answer that you want, that yes, of course, cities and towns are doing this. But the honest answer is no, they're really not. And to be additionally honest, I'm kind of glad that they're, you know, working with these cap agencies who do have the capacity. And they've been doing it for a period of time, so they kind of know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of the programs have been in place for more than 10 or 12 years, and they've been effective. And it is interesting to see how different populations may be targeted. So getting people in off the streets is kind of, I would say, a worthy goal. But oftentimes those individuals may need other kinds of supportive services to help them kind of get used to being inside because they're used to being out in a tent for years on end. So it may be laudable, but not as easy as it may sound.
Yeah.
A lot
Yes.
of case management, you know.
I wonder if Community Action Inc. in Haverhill has done this with home funds for any
Yeah,
of the
I'm
other
not
communities.
aware that they have, to be honest.
Okay.
And Bob is at our table for our regular monthly meetings of all the homeless providers.
Okay.
So we know Bob from that. And I think actually he lives in Newburyport, I recall. But I don't think they've ever used home funds, at least not in the recent future, not for at least 6 or 7 years. And I'm thinking maybe not ever. So if the question of a housing inspection sounds problematic, I can offer to send to you, Caitlin, the housing inspection checklist that some of our other organizations use. It might be 3 or 4 pages long, but you can, well, easy for me to say, you can zip right through it, but it shouldn't take a whole long time to inspect a unit and determine that certain things are available and in place. And if you had that to show to someone, like the folks at Community Action, maybe they would say, sure, we can do this without any problem. Or CTI, as you point out, Susan.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then maybe you'll be giving some more thought about the short-term subsidy of first, last, and security versus a longer-term subsidy if there's someone who really needs this to keep them in their unit for a period of time. And sounds like you have access to, well, you're either have or are hoping to have access to other resources. I do hope you get a CPA grant, and I believe that that's an allowable use of CPA funds. But because it's a short-term subsidy, that unit obviously would not be counted on the subsidized housing inventory. But if these are subsidized units to begin with, then the city gets to count them anyway.
Right. Right. That's true.
Kevin, if we decided we wanted to pursue this, working with you and the home funds,
Yeah.
what is the process?
Well, I guess we'd ask you to let us know what your intentions are. If you would like to use those dollars that we have set aside for the city, just let us know that you're intending to set up a program to use those dollars for short-term rental assistance, tenant-based rental assistance. We would, I guess our typical stance would be to develop a contract between the grantee and the consortium, which would outline, the parameters of this. We try to make it easy if we can to kind of use whatever systems in place that other cap agencies may be using to make it happen. And then it would be the simple process of giving us the name and address of the person on that federal form. And we'd log it into the system and make those dollars available for that particular household. So let's say it's one household and you're giving them, I don't know, $8,000, then you would set it up in the system and you'd have the ability to draw against that, and we would issue a check to the grantee. Let's say a check to the city of Newburyport or to Pettingill, if you choose to do it that way, to cover those costs. And it would work that way until the funds have run out, and we'll all be keeping track of where they go and how fast.
So presumably the home dollars would go to the city or Pettingill, and then a check would be written to the landlord. Can it go to the landlord or does it have to go to the tenant?
Well, I think those would be local decisions that you would make. We don't issue checks to landlords because if we have like 700 landlords across Essex County, that would be just too much for us. So we would like to have the one grantee, either the city.
Right. No, I understand that, but I guess I'm just trying to think it through.
Yeah, thinking through. So it probably would be yes, making a payment to the landlord and having the landlord enter into some kind of an understanding about this is how we're helping this household. And then the household has to accept the fact that they would be contributing something if they are, and that would not always be the case. And yeah.
So that would be similar to the program we're already running with for
Probably.
COVID relief. Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Right.
Okay.
CAI does not have inspectional services. I just confirmed.
Oh, they don't. Okay.
They do not. So CTI, because I believe they are the Section 8 administrators for Newburyport, and they inspect those units. So they could be contracted, or I'm sure Metro Housing Boston has a really robust inspectional services department. So either one we could contract with.
Either one, or in fact, it may be a remote chance, but you might also reach out to the Newburyport Housing Authority. They may have some people there who know how to inspect a unit and fill in a form. You know, it's pretty common sense stuff. And if they're willing to do it, and if some way to compensate them for doing that could be found, that might be a more of a local response and maybe faster. If they happen to,
definitely. Tracy's got the chops to do that for sure.
Kevin, it's Caitlin. Are we working with any kind of deadline for these funds right now?
Not a hard and firm deadline, but because of the fact that we've allowed the funds to slide from this last cycle, we would typically provide a deadline of June 30th to our communities to make a decision about the use of these funds, and then they would otherwise revert back to our competitive pool. We didn't do this. We didn't do that this past June because it was COVID. You know, people don't have time to even think of these things. So I think we've released the numbers for the current funding year, and HUD calls it 2020, back in March or April. And so we don't have a hard and fast date, but I'm thinking probably September 30th for you to make a decision about how to use these funds. They don't have to be used by then, but we need to have a contract in place before September 30th. And sounds like you'd be intending to do that way before that time. Or if in fact, I mean, to fulfill Madeline's dreams, some wonderful developer will come in and develop some affordable housing, and you may decide to commit the funds to that. So there's time to make up your mind about what you want to do and time to decide what you envision as the parameters of this program. And I think we would certainly want to be as flexible as we can with you. But then we do have that caveat of the short term, meaning even a 12-month cycle is kind of a short term. And in some instances, when a household has not found an alternative to their housing needs, we've allowed for a 1-year renewal to that. But we really, I think the program is not intended to be a year after year use of home funds for that purpose. And maybe in some ways you wouldn't want to do that either. If you have access to funds that are really intended for development, but you're using it for rental subsidies because the need is so great right now, maybe you would like to leave the options open as to how you would like to use it in the future. So I don't know, is that a long roundabout answer, as I'm so good at?
No, that's helpful, definitely. Yeah.
So, I mean, very succinctly, the city and some local provider can use up $77,000 pretty quickly, depending on the kind of program you want to create. And it sounds like you would consider flexibility if you built it.
Yeah. 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 It sounds like we definitely have some options.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just, because it's on the tip of my tongue, I don't want to neglect to say this, but it's totally your decision. But if you're talking about this as a program being available to the general public, I guess you really don't know in advance what does that mean if you have all of a sudden have 200 applications or something like that. So if you give some thought to the kind of criteria or the kind of prioritizations you would like to make, that might help you.
Yep.
If you want to help, let's say you want to base it on family size or income or something like that, but maybe just prioritize what you would like to do so that in the event that you have to say no to someone, and it seems likely, that you'll be on firm ground in those decisions.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. Good.
So I'm sorry, this feels like a gloomy conversation.
No,
No.
not at all.
Very helpful.
Yeah.
And
That's
it's
what you
great we
get.
have some time to mull it over.
Yeah, you do, yeah. And I'm trying to think, I mean, if you want to reach out to the folks at Action up in Gloucester or NASCAP in Peabody to ask, how it works for them or for any pointers, you'd have time to do that too.
Or North Andover.
Yeah, I mean, North Andover is, as I say, dealing with downtown Lawrence, the CAP agencies there, Greater Lawrence Community Action Council, I think is the name.
Yeah.
And then if Action Inc., I'm sorry, Community Action with Bob Gold is implementing a raft program, maybe they have some capacity that you wouldn't be aware of unless you ask.
Right. Right.
Who's the person in North Andover who's working on this? Who's your contact there?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, but I can dig it out and send it to you in the morning.
Okay.
It's
Well,
probably,
not George, is it?
George has been in the middle of most everything we've done in North Andover, as you know, Judy.
Yes.
But I think this actually has been a member of the community development staff or the planning staff.
Not Jean Enright?
Mm,
No.
could be. It's been, 8 or 9 months since I've had any contact with her. And I think she's primarily dealing with my grants manager, Lisa Green, on implementing the program.
Yep. Yep. Well, yeah, I mean, Tracy Watson is our housing authority person, and she's from North Andover. So,
Oh, yeah. And Tracy, as you say, can probably take on almost anything and get it done. So if kind of offer a great deal about inspecting units, she'll
right.
find a way.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we should definitely ask her.
Yeah.
Good.
Maybe
So
take a cake and bring it over to her and then ask her or something like that.
Anything else for Kevin? Do we have any other questions? Anybody, Tiffany or trust members?
I'm good.
Caitlin?
No, I'm good for right now, but thank you, Kevin, so much for coming on to this meeting. And I'm going to do a little bit of research about those communities you mentioned. And thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. Good to talk to you.
Thanks,
Yes, same here.
Kevin.
Hope it's helpful. All right. See
Thank
you
you.
later.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. And do we have any other questions for Tiffany?
I actually had a question because
okay.
since we have Sierra on, I just wanted to make sure, I know that Sierra sent an email out regarding our like PR outreach and really doing our due diligence to make sure we're getting the word out. So I know she sent a bullet point of kind of some suggestions, and I just want to make sure we're all on the same page and so we're not duplicating, we're not missing any opportunities to make sure that we're getting the word out and really reaching the residents of Newburyport.
Thanks, Tiffany and Sierra. That was a great list. And I actually took Sierra's suggestion about contacting the Chamber of Commerce, and they included a little write-up in their newsletter that went out a couple of days ago. So I'm wondering if that's why you saw an uptick in applications. Perhaps different people saw that. So that was a really good suggestion. And, you know, a lot of the ideas that Sierra had we're working with, and I think we're just going to continue to kind of duplicate what we do, keep putting flyers out, keep making sure we're doing social media, reaching out, you know, school administrators, you know, the daily news for press releases and things like that.
Yeah, I did see something in the Daily News this week.
Today.
Oh, today. Okay. Yeah.
Yep, today. I think they wrote, is it the funds are still available? So
Yeah.
they wrote, yeah.
Yeah, anyways, I can be of assistance in that way, getting the word out. You know, I'm happy to do that. But obviously, as Tiffany said, we want to avoid duplication as far as who we're contacting, and you know, keep a consistent message. So yeah, just keep in communication about that. And thank you, Caitlin, for reaching out to the chamber. And Tiffany and I were talking the other day about reaching out to the school and asking them if they would send out a call to all of the staff members and families in the district, which has been, we've done that before with our backpack and school supply program annually, and that's been a pretty effective way to get the word out to a lot of families all at once. So if we want to do that, be happy to reach out.
Yeah, that is definitely a good way to get to people.
Good idea. So what is it? Like an automated call that goes out to everybody on their?
Yep. Yeah, you can just write a script with whatever messaging you want to send out, and then it goes out to, you know, all families in the district all at once. So.
I believe the flyer that Sierra created has been, you know, all over the place. I haven't seen it yet, but I think it appears on like the rotation on our local cable channels. Has anyone else seen that?
I've seen the flyer, but not the cable channel.
Okay.
I'll look at the cable channel too often. I mean, I think the idea of a call through the school system is an interesting idea. I don't think we've done anything like that before. I don't see any reason not to.
Right.
If they're willing to do it. So
Sean
how would we do
Gallagher
that?
might put it in. Sean Gallagher puts out like a weekly email, so he could add that to his announcements.
Who does?
Sean Gallagher, the superintendent of school.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll reach out to his office. I think I contacted his assistant maybe like a month ago, so I'll reach out again and see if they can do a call.
Right. So we have our draft CPC application, right, Caitlin? You shared
That's
that with
right.
us.
Yes.
And that is for one of the things we've touched on tonight. That would be down payment assistance for rental units in income restricted rental properties, right? And it is our idea that it would also be administered by Pettingill if it's funded. Yes.
What we put forward, so the draft application right now is for, you know, a total reimbursement for the emergency rental assistance program plus an additional 90 to begin a general rental assistance program, first, last, and security deposit. I guess the question that, is still remaining is if, Pettingill has, the bandwidth to begin that with us and begin to run it for us.
Right.
That would not be with the home dollars, that would be with CPA.
Right.
Right. Right.
My only question is that regarding, again, the inspection, obviously we're speaking to the landlords, we're talking to the tenants. That's not our area of expertise, so that's not the criteria for this specific funding. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
and just so you're aware, just because there is more funding, there is more uptick there. I keep saying, like, we don't know, but COVID is not going away just because of immunizations and all of that. Like, so I am looking to hire another social worker to assist with emergency financial assistance applications. So I definitely think that we will have the internal infrastructure to handle some additional applications.
Yes, so this would not require inspections.
And it would conceivably be less necessary anyways, especially if it's, targeted to properties that have income restrictions. They're going to have, for example, the new property being developed by Minco is going to be new construction.
Right.
So
it's going to have an inspection anyway.
Yeah, and it's just going to be in much better condition than many properties.
And is this the AMI the same as the current COVID funding? Because I heard Kevin say that the home funds had a restriction of you couldn't go up to 80%. It was up to 60.
Right.
So in the current Newburyport Crossings is up to 80% AMI.
Yeah, it has to be 80 actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this funding that you're speaking about obviously it's up to 80% AMI.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And I know, so they're taking applications. And then there's a lottery in March of 2021.
I think so.
Yep, that's
Yes.
correct.
Yeah, for the Minco property we're talking about.
Yep.
right? Yeah, I just saw the
So our
flyer.
timing is off.
Right. I was going to mention that. So I was thinking if we tweak the CPA application to be both a reimbursement for this emergency program, then some kind of future reimbursement for this program. So I think, the CPA funds would be available, maybe in the summer and fall, and that's going to be too late. Because I
Right.
think they're talking about occupancy, in the spring, summer.
So we might need to create a program so that we're ready to respond for this rental opportunity that's coming up now.
Yeah.
And how would we publicize this? Would we ask Minco to include that in the flyer, and ask the lottery agent to kind of tell people about it, I would guess?
Yep, I think that'd be a good way to do that.
I mean, I guess it would be good to get word out. I'm just thinking of who, someone who could afford the monthly rent, but just doesn't have the savings, maybe wouldn't even bother. So I guess it would be good to get it out through other channels as well, like we're doing with the emergency rental assistance.
So yes, so if we did a program, we'd be counting on CPA to come through with funding. We'd be, taking a risk thinking that they were gonna, reimburse us or, eventually provide the funding.
I personally feel willing to take the risk, partly because I feel like it's an opportunity to help people right now. And while I want to save as much money as we can for that great affordable housing development that's just around the corner, it seems pretty far around the corner. So, and I'd like to think that if there is something that comes up, we'll be able to get more money from the CPC, I would hope,
Right.
at that time.
So they're thinking of occupancy in the spring. So the lottery's in March.
That's what I've been hearing. I know Andy Port's on this call. Andy, are you there? Have you heard that that's the case? Well, maybe he stepped away for a moment, but I am hearing that that's
Yeah.
the case. Oh, sorry. Hi.
Sorry, I just had to unmute myself. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just checking. Have you heard, can you confirm that Newburyport Crossing, they're going to probably have occupancy in the spring, probably around in June?
Yeah, we're expecting that spring to summertime for them to be going for their occupancy there. So.
Okay.
And how many units, affordable units?
19, I think.
19.
So maybe we set some kind of limit, figure out, I mean, we'd have to take an average. I don't know if Caitlin, you could do a little calculus for us, but an average of sort of what the different units are, because the price varies by unit, obviously, and say we would help, up to 10 families or something and figure out how much that is.
And we wouldn't necessarily be paying the full first, last, and security, maybe 50% of it or
right,
some amount.
right.
It probably also wouldn't be limited to just this one development. Is that right?
There's
Right,
two
but I'm thinking
buildings.
just to start before we even
Yeah.
have CPA funds, maybe it would be a limited scope like this, like for this development, and see how that goes. And see what the demand is.
Yeah, 'cause, Andy, were you going to say there's going to be another Minco project just like this?
Yeah, so on the lot next door, there's actually going to be a slightly larger building there. Largely the same design, but similar scale. So, thinking about, they wanted to roll, depending on the economy, of course, is what they last told us. They'd love to be able to roll from construction on one site to the next site. But all that's dependent on the market, of course, in a large part. So that's their goal, is to go from one site to the other. I know as you're thinking about, I definitely would help people out while there's a need, right now, and recognize that there's still going to be needs for, the Minko's project, the units that are there and other places. But the Brown School, I know that city councils continue to have discussions about that, in the coming weeks and months. So, as decisions are made about that building and whether or not the local housing authority or some other entity ends up creating the housing units in that building, that's also an opportunity on the radar. Anyway, I don't know the time frame exactly, but the radar for potential uses of your fund. And I definitely think, I don't think there's any risk in assuming that you're going to get a chunk of money every year from the CPA that could replenish or reimburse, like you said earlier.
Okay.
So are we saying we do want to limit it to this development?
I don't think we have to. I think we're limiting it to income restricted rental units. And
Yeah, it's more
might-
figuring out what the maximum, I mean, we don't, not that I anticipate it being, some crazy thing, but I guess we want to have some, I just felt we should have some limit with our funds.
Yeah.
And I was just coming up with a way to come up with that, which was,
estimating
calculating.
what it might be.
Yeah,
For first, last, and security.
yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I think that's clean, and it's like a down payment assistance program for rental. I like that. And then you're done, right? Off you go.
Right.
Right. And that's what we have drafted in our CPC application that Kate put together.
I mean, and it doesn't have to be a subsidized unit. It could be, you know, I mean, if we have verification of what the income is and what the rental is, then I don't, yeah, I take that back. Nobody has an affordable rental private home anymore in Newburyport.
Okay,
Mm. Yeah, so, anything, anything else we need to talk about with the CPA application?
I'm wondering if there, should there be a vote for this? And do you want to include, you know, administrative fees in the vote, you know, 90,000 plus administrative fees or something like that? Or I don't know what you're thinking.
Yeah, we should definitely have a vote.
I'm a little hard pressed to say the amount though, without, I thought that maybe we could vote on that. We'd like to do a program, but estimate, or are you saying for the application, Caitlin?
For the application, yes, because
Oh,
it's
yeah,
due.
yeah, that
We
makes
probably
sense.
won't be meeting before it's.
Yeah,
due.
that makes
Yeah.
sense. Sorry, my bad.
Okay.
so 90,000 plus admin. I think if we used our existing rental assistance program, what was the admin cost for that?
It was 10,000.
It was 10, right? Yeah.
So we could do the 90,000 plus 10,000. Is that what you're suggesting, Caitlin?
I think so. I think that's kind of what we had talked about at the last meeting, and that's what's in there now,
Yep.
pretty much.
Okay,
Okay.
good. So that sounds good to me. So you want us to vote on that application, to approve the application as drafted?
Yeah, sure. Maybe approve the application as drafted, and then the amount for, you know, the reimbursement of the emergency rental assistance plus this new amount for the new program.
So
Okay.
moved.
Okay.
Second, all in favor?
I,
Aye.
Excellent.
Aye.
Excellent, good. So that's due
Let's do February 4th.
February 4th, good. Wow,
Do we want to let Tiffany go? Is she still on? I feel like,
sure. Thank-
unless you just want to hang out with us all night.
I know I'm starting to fade. So
Yeah, thank you, thanks.
Well, thank you.
thank you so much.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, are we almost done? Because I'm starved.
Me too.
Yeah, do we have anything else?
I'm going to say something. I don't think we need to get into a long conversation about it, but my understanding is that the city council is considering a vote on the Low Street Armory project property that would put an environmental restriction on the property. If the city buys it, that they would put an ER on it. And I just feel that that would be unfortunate because then the property could never be used for affordable housing. And I don't think that is the intent for the environmental restriction. But I also feel that this is a very complicated matter, and I don't know that the trust really wants to get involved in this matter at this point in time. I'm just sort of raising that as a thought. I think I mentioned it the last time we met. So.
Oh, yeah, I'm not, if the mayor was here, I was gonna ask the mayor if she had any thoughts, at any point of that property having be considered for affordable housing if it doesn't work out for youth services.
This is Andy. Could I speak to that?
Sure.
I don't want to speak on behalf of the mayor, but if you're talking about the 57 Low Street property that the city is acquiring from the National Guard, it definitely seems like there's a more immediate need for an existing city department that's going to be met. So if it's not youth services, it may very well be the Parks Department, for instance. So I don't know what it will go to, but I think it's much less likely. I think that housing is going to, it's not in the top two right now. Needs that the city has for that already established essentially in terms of the mayor and the city council. So it's a
So-
possibility, but I don't think it's ranked first right now in terms of priorities that need to be addressed.
So why is that? Because I personally have a problem with, not that I think we need to go out there and start advocating for this property to be affordable housing, but why is it that the city doesn't have affordable housing as a priority?
Well, I guess I can't, again, I can't speak for other parties, but I think that there's a couple things going on there. This property, actually, the reason this property was originally pursued with the National Guard for acquisition is because the mayor and Andy Egmont, as I understood it, there had been some discussion several years back, actually, about the good location of that property next to the schools there and how ideal that could be for a possible facility for them. And so the mayor had spent a good amount of time with the National Guard trying to get to the point we're at now, where they're agreeing to sell it to us at a reasonable price. But that was always the expectation, at least from the administration, that it would be used potentially for youth services because there was a specific need for that department. In terms of affordable housing needs, in my opinion, rather than, my 2 cents is, rather than focusing on Low Street and throwing sort of another oar in the water about what happens with that property, I think the more likely way of getting to of housing and preferably affordable housing, as opposed to just the percentage of affordable, is youth services. There's an effort to be made to sort of keep youth services at the Brown School, and that's going to significantly limit the amount of options that are available there. If it does stay there, there are also significant costs to renovating and remediating that building. So to me, it seems more wise, if you're going to focus efforts, to focus on the housing that could be made at the Brown School than could be made at a property that's just now being acquired from the Commonwealth for what has been articulated, at least by the mayor, as a specific city department need. And the city council has had some discussion about other city needs, but rather than throwing another oar in a location where I don't think it's going to make much progress, just my 2 cents, you might want to focus the efforts on trying to make the Brown School a more viable project and place for housing. And in my opinion, it complicates it having youth services there. The mayor and the council will have to decide what to do, but to me, it greatly complicates the ability to make affordable housing at the Brown School if you reduce the project size to only the 2 upper floors.
Right. Yeah, I get that. I don't disagree. My point was, I don't understand why we have to put an environmental restriction on it. And because I feel that negates the opportunity to do housing.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. I think regardless of the use, I would suggest, if you're concerned about that, whether you send a letter or send emails or attend council meetings, you need to let the councilors know that, because that's where that originated. Our offices does not recommend that. We were asked to help in coordinating language for something like that at one of the councilors' requests, sort of a demand that be placed at the time of acquisition. I do not recommend that in any shape or form, because I think in the city's own fiduciary duties, it does not make sense to limit your own property when you just bought it, when you're not even sure what you're going to use it for, and what site plan or layout you're going to be using. So but again, these things have been sort of linked together now, trying to resolve what happens with youth services in the Brown School before even closing on the property. That closing was expected to happen before the end of the calendar year. So again, I would suggest, if you're concerned about that limitation not being imposed, I would suggest letting your council members know, either by attending meetings or sending emails or whatnot.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Andy.
Okay. All right. Yes, thank you, Andy. Yep. So do we have minutes?
Not today, unfortunately, but we do have the recordings if you wanted to go back and listen to any of the recordings from the past 2 meetings.
Okay. So we just need to schedule another meeting.
Yes, I have selected, because we have to juggle the historical commission meetings on Thursdays too. So I suggested either February 4th or February 18th.
Okay, Thursdays. Yeah, either one's fine with me.
I would suggest we do the 4th, just so we can maybe sort of try to work on some of the things that we talked about tonight with the
Yeah,
home funds,
okay.
unless
I'm for
we
me,
want to push it off. Is that
All right.
okay with you, Karen?
works with me. Yep.
Okay.
Great.
Works.
Suzanne.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, good.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Meeting adjourned.
All right.
Have a good week.
Thanks,
Good
everyone.
night.
Happy New
Hey.
Year.
Here.
Bye. Happy New Year.
Okay, good
Bye.
Have a
night.
good night.
Good night.
Good night.